We're deep enough into the current arc that I think it's time for me to talk about the students that I think are the most powerful in Class 1B. That being said, there are some spoilers ahead. I've done my best to keep it as vague as possible, but no one's perfect. So proceed with that knowledge in mind. Now, let's get right into things. First up, I have chosen Nito Monoma for the bottom spot on this list. As much as I dislike his personality, I think I would be remiss to not at least include him in the list. His quirk copy allows him to, well, copy the quirks of others. And to tack onto that, he is able to use mind tricks on his opponents to make them overestimate their own chances and create guesses based on what he wants them to perceive, especially when that doesn't match up with reality. Part of his viability on this list is taking into account his ability to confuse in tandem with the sheer versatility of his quirk. The biggest downside to his quirk that is immediately noticeable is necessitating that he touch his opponent before he can assimilate it and use it as his own. This has the pretty obvious drawback of facing off against characters like Deku and Bakugo, who are absolutely broken as quirk users in close and medium range combat. Another weakness being that just because he can use most quirks, doesn't mean that he is going to instantly be good at using said quirk. This would take a lot of pre-planning and knowing exactly which quirks would be best suited for any particular situation, which isn't entirely out of the question considering how well he is able to manipulate opponents' expectations of what his quirk is capable of. It's for this rather mixed bag that I would consider him to be at the bottom of this list. That being said, he's still in what I would consider the top end of his class. These next three aren't in any particular order except by my personal preference, because I think any one of them could beat each other depending on the situation. This, in my opinion, is where the real competition begins between the very best of the top students of 1B. But again, this is as always based on my own personal opinion. In fourth, I placed Yosetsu Obase. He placed 10th overall in the entrance exam, showcasing just how much of a force he could become in the future. His quirk Weld allows him to attach and detach both organic and inorganic materials together on a molecular level. This makes his ability to restrain even better than Mineta's. While not an extremely powerful combatant skill on its own, in a supporting role or with sufficient chance to take the opponent by surprise, he more than earns his place on this list. The greatest downside to his quirk is that he must be in contact with the things he is melding together. This necessitates that he must get extremely close if he wants to use it on his opponents directly. This is counterbalanced somewhat by his ability to surprise his enemies, but against an opponent with enhanced hearing like Jiro, his surprise attack would be virtually ineffective. But because sensory types seem to not be all too common, this only takes a little away from him. One other problem I have falls in line with having to approach his opponent. Against powerful melee or mid-ranged opponents, his options are a little more limited, which hampers his ability to restrain his enemy in an open head-to-head matchup. In third, I have Ibara Shiozaki. I don't think anyone is exactly surprised by this entry on the list. Placing fourth in the entrance exam, she immediately places herself as a capable hero in training. Her quirk Vines allows her to go toe-to-toe with other students like Kaminari, who is capable of incapacitating most any villain he has come up against. Not only did she beat him, it wasn't even close. Her abilities are even more fearsome after training with Kamui Wood, a hero who possesses a very similar quirk. Possibly her biggest weakness is that she remains mostly immobile while fighting, which allows quicker or more agile quirks to get around her vines. That isn't to say it makes her helpless, but it definitely keeps her from being the top student of her class. A possible way I could see her overcoming this weakness is by using her vines as a sort of armor by wrapping her body in them. This would both allow her better mobility and defense while fighting in hand-to-hand combat if it ever came to that. In second, I have the Mushroom Queen herself, Kinoko Komori. While the least effective on this list in a purely combative setting, she is possibly the scariest to fight in a drawn-out battle. This was showcased by her being able to incapacitate Tokoyami, something even Shihai couldn't do. The more time she is given to spread her mushroom spores and allow them to germinate, the more dangerous she becomes. But just as it is dangerous, she also has a charge time equivalent to that of Goku powering up a spirit bomb. This need to set up her attacks mitigates how potentially lethal her quirk really is. Most villains would not willingly wait around for her to set up the area for her mushrooms. This almost creates a requirement that she either work in tandem with other heroes, or have prior knowledge of the terrain that she will be fighting on, and have her spores already set up before it takes place. This isn't even to mention that, because of her rather small size, she has nearly none of the potential for taking on enemies as a solo fighter, further relegating her to a team position. And finally, to who I believe is the most powerful student in Class 1B. I don't think this student is leagues better than the others, but I believe he stands out just enough that I can't in good conscience place any of the others in the same tier of hero as him. And that student is none other than Girotashishida. With a decently high intellect, he is easily one of the showstoppers of his class. His quirk Beast pairs extremely well with that, going against the typical archetype of being big and brutish or cunning and weakling. He gets the best of both worlds, as his pseudo-gigantification type quirk gives him the enhanced strength, speed, and senses of an apex animal, while also giving him enough smarts to outthink and maneuver his opponents during battle. This allows him to tank and even avoid hits as he gets in closer for his devastatingly powerful attacks. His disadvantage is essentially the same as his advantage, as odd as that might sound. His quirk requires him to become much larger to gain the enhancements. This makes him a huge target. I know he mitigates it to a certain degree by training to allow himself to quickly change back and forth from humanoid to beast-like states, but I can't help but feel that against more agile or physically stronger opponents who don't require those changes, those seconds necessary to change could cost him the battle. And there you have it, my list for the top 5 students in Class 1B. What do you think? Who would you say are the best students? Tell me down below. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and liking the video. It'll help me and the channel out immensely. Have a great day, my dudes.